Have you ever caught yourself standing in the cereal aisle watching your child completely unravel over the wrong shaped snack and felt a quiet, exhausted thought rise up inside you, wondering if you are somehow failing at the one thing you wanted to get right more than anything else in your life? If that moment feels familiar, you are exactly who this video was made for. Today, we are stepping into The Whole Brain Child, written by Dr. Daniel Siegel, a neuropsychiatrist at UCLA, and Tina Payne Bryson, a psychotherapist and mother of three. Together, they take something that feels like chaos, a child's meltdown, a slammed door, a silent car ride home, and show you the actual science quietly running underneath it. This book matters right now because so many of us were raised to believe that a calm child is a well behaved child and a struggling child is simply a difficult one. Siegel and Bryson gently dismantled that idea using real brain science, the kind that explains why your sweet, reasonable 8-year-old can transform into someone you barely recognize within seconds. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly what is happening inside your child's mind in their hardest moments, and more importantly, what is happening inside yours. Stay with us because there's a particular feeling many parents carry quietly, a fear that they are somehow building cracks instead of foundations, and this book speaks directly to that fear in a way that might surprise you. Here inside Nestwell, we like to call this kind of understanding the difference between managing behavior and actually meeting a mind. There is a specific shift that happens near the end of this video, something most parents do not expect, and it changes how today's hardest moment with your child might actually look tomorrow. Before we go further, if you are someone who loves deeply and simply wants to get this parenting thing right, even on the days it feels impossible, please consider subscribing to Nestwell. We build this space for people exactly like you, people quietly trying to raise whole, connected children without losing themselves in the process. The heart of the book, two brains are better than one. Now we step into the very first idea this book wants you to understand. The one Siegel and Bryson believe changes everything else that follows, and they call it the difference between your child's left brain and right brain. The left side of your child's brain loves logic, language, lists, and order. It wants things to make sense. The right side is different entirely. It lives in feeling, in nonverbal cues, in raw emotional experience, in the wordless sensation of being overwhelmed. Most tantrums are not defiance at all. They are simply a right brain completely flooded with no left brain logic yet available to calm it. And this is where most parents accidentally make things worse without realizing it. When a child is mid-meltdown, drowning in right brain emotion, our instinct is to reason with them, to explain calmly why their reaction does not match the situation. But you cannot reach a flooded right brain with left brain logic. It simply will not land. The authors called the better approach connect and redirect, which means meeting the emotional wave first through tone, touch, and presence before ever attempting to introduce reason. Connection always has to come before correction, or the words simply bounce off. Most people watching this believe they are calming their child when they explain the rule again, a little louder, a little slower. But if you are honest, you are often trying to calm your own rising frustration more than you are actually reaching your child. That is not a failure. That is simply what happens when nobody ever taught us this distinction. The book also introduces name it to tame it, where helping a child tell the story of what just happened, calmly and afterward, actually engages the left brain and brings the right brain's intensity back down to something manageable. What the authors discovered through years of clinical work is that children who are regularly helped to narrate their big feelings develop a noticeably steadier relationship with their own emotions over time. That heavy thought might feel like it adds one more job to your already full plate. But sit with it a little longer and it becomes something closer to relief, because you do not need to fix the storm in the moment. You only need to stand beside it until it passes, and that is something you are already capable of doing. And what the authors reveal next is the quiet architecture behind almost every difficult parenting moment you will ever face, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Building the staircase of the mind. The next idea Siegel and Bryson introduce becomes the quiet architecture behind almost every difficult parenting moment you will ever face, and they call it the upstairs and downstairs brain. Picture the brain as a two-story house. The downstairs brain develops early and handles instinct, breathing, and the rawest emotional reactions, including fight, flight, and freeze. The upstairs brain, responsible for empathy, planning, and good decisions, develops slowly across childhood and is not even fully finished until well into someone's 20s. Most tantrums simply mean the downstairs brain has taken over the house. And late at night, after everyone has finally gone to bed, a small voice tends to surface, doesn't it, quietly asking whether your child is simply going to be difficult forever, whether this is just who they are. The book offers something gentler than that fear. engage rather than enrage, the authors call it, which means appealing to whatever sliver of upstairs brain access still remains, instead of triggering even more downstairs panic through yelling or ultimatums. The goal during a meltdown is never to win the moment. It is to help your child's upstairs brain come back online. This next realization is the exact moment everything quietly shifts for many parents who read this book. The upstairs brain is like a muscle, and the authors describe practical, age appropriate ways to actually exercise it during calm moments, not chaotic ones, so it grows stronger over time. Simple things, like letting your child weigh a hard decision or asking what they think should happen next, slowly strengthen the very part of the brain responsible for self control and empathy. You are not just surviving today's tantrum, you are quietly building tomorrow's capacity for patience. This is where most advice quietly falls short, because most parenting content treats meltdowns purely as behavior problems to correct, when this book reveals they are often simply a downstairs brain doing its job a little too well. The authors also point out something deceptively simple: that movement itself, getting a child's body moving through a walk, a stretch, even jumping in place, can shift their internal state when words alone cannot reach them. Sometimes the fastest path back to a regulated child is not a conversation at all, it is simply motion. Kill the butterflies before going any further. There is a concept the authors believe quietly reshapes how families heal from hard moments, and it is called integrating memory for growth and healing. Memories are not stored like neat photographs in a drawer. They live as fragments, scattered across sensation, emotion, and image. And when a difficult memory stays unintegrated, it can resurface in behavior that confuses both the child and the parent watching it happen, with neither one fully understanding why. The book shares a real story from the author's own clinical experience involving a toddler named Marco, who survived a frightening car accident alongside his sister. For weeks afterward, Marco kept reenacting fragments of the crash through repetitive, confusing play, until his mother, having learned this exact framework from Tina, began gently retelling the story alongside him, again and again, until the fragmented memory slowly became one coherent, less frightening narrative he could finally hold without being overwhelmed by it. And this next part is precisely the section most viewers say they were not expecting. The part that quietly reframes everything they thought they understood about a child's strange or repetitive behavior after something hard happens. The authors call this "use the remote of the mind," the practice of gently helping a child replay a difficult memory on their own terms, pausing, rewinding, and retelling until what once felt like an open wound becomes something they can finally set down. This is not about forcing a child to relive pain. It is about helping them finish a story their mind never got to complete. Most parents believe avoiding the subject entirely is the kindest choice after something frightening happens to their child. But if you are honest with yourself, that silence often comes from your own discomfort more than your child's actual needs. The deeper layer most people miss here is that children who never get help integrating a hard memory often carry its fragments quietly into adulthood, resurfacing as unexplained fears or reactions that seem to come from nowhere at all, when really they were simply waiting to be understood. The United States of me. And what comes next is the part of this book that quietly addresses the fear most parents never say out loud, the one about repeating something unhealed from their own childhood without even realizing it. We now arrive at the chapter that gently reshapes how this book thinks about identity itself, the one Siegel calls integrating the many parts of the self, built around something he named Mindsight. Mindsight simply means the ability to perceive your own mind clearly enough to understand it, and eventually to understand the minds of people around you too. Children, like adults, contain many different parts: the anxious part, the playful part, the part still upset about this morning, and a healthy mind learns to hold all of them together without being ruled by just one. The authors describe this using the image of a wheel, where the hub at the center represents calm awareness, and the many points along the rim represent every passing feeling, sensation, or thought. The goal is never to eliminate the difficult feelings sitting somewhere on that rim. The goal is helping your child learn to return again and again to that steady center, the place from which they can observe a feeling instead of becoming completely consumed by it. This single shift quietly becomes the foundation for almost everything else the book has built so far. But here's where most parents accidentally make the same gentle mistake, hoping a child will simply outgrow the part of them that feels too much. The anxious part, the dramatic part, the part that seems to overreact to everything. Siegel and Bryson suggest something far more useful, teaching children that feelings are like clouds passing through a sky that is always far bigger than any single cloud. A child taught early that they are not their fear, not their anger, not their sadness, grows into someone who can feel deeply without ever becoming lost inside that feeling. That distinction alone can change a childhood. If you take nothing else from this video, take this. The most powerful parenting tool in this entire book is not a script, a phrase, or a perfectly timed response. It is your own regulated presence in the room when everything in your child feels unregulated. Children borrow their nervous system from the adults around them long before they can build a steady one of their own, which means the calmest version of you, even imperfectly practiced, becomes the very thing your child eventually learns to become themselves. We are all in this together, and now we reach the final piece of this puzzle, the chapter where Siegel and Bryson widen a lens from the individual mind to something larger, the family and community holding that mind together, what they describe as integrating the self with others. No child develops a steady whole brain in complete isolation. They develop it through thousands of small, repeated moments of connection, repair, and being truly seen by the people who love them, especially after the hard moments, not only during the easy ones. This is where the deepest reassurance of the entire book quietly arrives, because Siegel and Bryson are not asking you to become a perfect parent who never loses patience or never raises their voice on a hard day. They are asking you to become someone who returns again and again after the inevitable rupture and repairs the connection honestly. A repaired moment, they explain, often teaches a child more about secure love than an unbroken one ever could, because it shows them that mistakes do not end relationships. They simply become part of how relationships grow. At this point, the picture feels complete. Connection before correction, the upstairs and downstairs brain, memory integration, the wheel of awareness, the power of your own regulated presence. The architecture is there. But just when the lesson seems fully delivered, the authors add one final truth that changes how you hold every hard parenting moment you have ever had. So if there is one truth this entire book keeps circling back toward, the question we opened this video with, wondering if you are quietly building cracks instead of foundations, finally finds its answer here. You are not failing simply because today was hard. You are succeeding every single time you choose to come back, to repair, to try again with the same child who watched you lose your patience an hour earlier. That return is not damage control. According to the framework laid out across the entire book, it is the actual architecture of secure, lasting connection. Key takeaways: the first thing this book gently asks you to remember, and perhaps the single most important shift inside it, is what the authors call connect before you correct. Every meltdown, every refusal, every dramatic overreaction to something small is your child's right brain signaling distress before their left brain has any logic available to offer, reaching for connection first. A calm tone, a steady touch, simply being present is not indulgence. It is the only doorway through which correction can eventually walk through and actually be heard. In practice, this might look like kneeling beside your child during a public meltdown instead of standing over them issuing instructions, or saying, "This feels really big right now," before saying anything else at all. The lesson here is patience disguised as strategy. You are not letting them win. You are simply meeting the brain that is actually available to you in that exact moment, which is almost never the reasonable one you are hoping to negotiate with. The second lesson worth carrying home is something the book calls naming the storm to calm the storm. Helping your child put words to a hard experience after the intensity has settled even slightly helps their brain process and release what otherwise stays trapped as raw, wordless emotion. This single habit, repeated consistently over months and years, is one of the strongest predictors of emotional resilience the authors describe throughout the entire book. You can begin tonight with something as small as asking your child to tell you the story of their hardest moment today without correcting or judging a single part of it. Simply listen. The goal is not to fix the story. It is to help them finish telling it, because an unfinished emotional story is exactly what keeps resurfacing as behavior nobody quite understands, including the child living inside it. The third lesson, quietly one of the most freeing in the entire book, is what we are calling feelings are visitors, not residents. Teaching your child that an emotion is something passing through them, not something defining who they fundamentally are, changes their entire relationship with fear, anger, and sadness for the rest of their life. This is the wheel of awareness in action, your child learning to return to their own calm center no matter what feeling happens to be visiting that day. You might try this by gently asking, "Is this the angry feeling visiting again?" instead of labeling your child as an angry kid. That small linguistic shift teaches separation between identity and emotion, something many adults are still quietly learning to do themselves, often decades later, in therapy rooms very similar to the ones Bryson works in every single day. The fourth lesson the book offers is memory wants to be finished. Difficult experiences that never get gently revisited and integrated do not simply disappear. They wait, sometimes for years, resurfacing as unexplained fears, sudden reactions, or quiet anxieties that seem to come from nowhere at all. Helping your child retell a hard memory at their own pace and never forced is one of the most protective things you can offer their developing mind. This might mean returning, briefly and gently, to something difficult from last month, not to dwell on it, but to help your child finally close a loop their mind left open. You are not reopening a wound. You are helping them finish a sentence their nervous system never got to complete. And that completion is often where real healing quietly begins. The fifth lesson, and the one that finally answers the quiet fear we planted at the very beginning of this video, is repair is the real bond. Every parent loses patience. Every parent has a moment they wish they could take back. What the authors want you to understand, what this whole book has been trying to tell you, is that the apology afterward, the honest return, the gentle repair, teaches your child more about love than the moment of perfection ever could have. You are not quietly building cracks. You are building the kind of foundation that only gets stronger through honest, repeated repair. Tonight, if today held a moment you regret, you do not need a perfect explanation. You simply need to return, sit beside your child, and say something honest like, "Earlier was hard for both of us, and I am here now." That single sentence, repeated across a childhood, becomes the quiet foundation this entire book was written to help you build. The closing reflection, what this book ultimately offers, is not a parenting manual full of rules to memorize and follow perfectly. It is something closer to a map of your child's inner world, drawn with enough warmth that you finally stop interpreting their hardest moments as defiance and start recognizing them as a developing brain doing exactly what developing brains do. Siegel and Bryson are not asking you to become someone new. They are simply asking you to see what was always quietly happening beneath the surface of every difficult moment you have ever shared together. In the next 7 days, choose one ordinary hard moment, a meltdown, a refusal, a slammed door, and instead of reaching immediately for correction, try reaching for connection first. Kneel down, soften your voice. Say, "This feels big," before you say anything else. Then, once things settle, gently help them tell the story of what just happened. That is the entire practice. Nothing more complicated than presence, followed by narration, repeated patiently across the ordinary days that quietly make up a whole childhood. And as for the specific shift we promised near the beginning, the one most parents do not expect, here it is. This book does not change your child. It changes how you see what was always happening inside them. And that shift in your own understanding is what quietly transforms how tomorrow's hardest moment unfolds. If something in tonight's video brought a specific moment with your own child to mind, please share it in the comments below. Like this video so more tired, loving parents can find their way here, and subscribe to Nestwell because we are building a place for people who are quietly trying to love better, parent better, and understand themselves a little more deeply, one honest, ordinary day at a time.